Hey, it's Luke with the Tailgate. So today, in some of the news that we've got going on, we've got USC, who's done some really great things in their recruiting for the 2025 season. We've got some more driving-related issues in Georgia. And then we've got Deion, who's kind of making a little bit of noise with regards to his son's draft stock, and Travis Hunter, so not just his sons. So we'll start off with USC. Got to give the Trojans a big shout out. Currently, they only have 5 signings for the 2025 recruiting class. But those 5 signings are by far some of the best. Right now, they are ranked, I think, 3rd in the recruiting class just with those 5 guys. Now, those 5 guys, we'll start off with Isaiah Gibson. He's a 4-star from Georgia. They've got Julian Lewis, who's a 5-star quarterback. He's going to look really good. I think he's going to be a great player. You've got 4-star safety, Hilton Stubbs. And then you've got a 3-star edge, Gus Cordova. Now, the big one that was just recently released, or the big signing recently, was defensive tackle Justice Terry. Now, if you remember, he's a 5-star, but he was flipped from Georgia. So now not only do they have Justice Terry as the 5-star, who they just flipped from Georgia, they went into Georgia and got Isaiah Gibson as well, who's that 4-star. So they really kind of went in there and just took everything from Georgia, but give it up to the Trojans. They did a great job with their recruiting. Now, on to Georgia. We mentioned them there, losing some of that. Now, the big news recently was running back Trevor Etienne, who had just transferred this offseason from Florida, who's looking, by all accounts, as their top running back option, especially with with the issues that they've had recently. This, to me, is kind of some big news. He was booked on DUI and 3 additional charges, which were like reckless driving, a couple other things like obstruction in the mirror, but this is not a good look. Georgia already has some vast issues with driving related things, stemming back from their, when the 2 cars were going like 100 miles an hour racing each other, and somebody passed away in that scenario. So I don't think this is a great start for him. Now, obviously, he's still going to play. This is not going to impact the actual football season. But I think this is yet again another reminder that, these guys, especially now with these college players who actually have some money, you see it in the pros and you see it in college all too often, where these guys are getting in the car and they're driving when they shouldn't. Now, these guys have money. We've got things like Uber. We've got stuff like Lyft. These guys have to be smarter. DUI is not just going to ruin somebody else's lives potentially, but it could ruin your life, it could ruin your career. So these guys just have to be smarter. So hopefully, whether this is like a one-time thing and he's going to realize how stupid it was and he's going to kind of change his ways, whether it's that or whether this is the call for help that he needs to kind of figure out like, hey, I shouldn't be doing this. Either way, hopefully he kind of flips the script and stops doing this kind of stuff. And hopefully it's a lesson to a lot of the other guys who might fall into the same trap to just not do it, that it's just not worth it. So moving on to another thing, Deion Sanders. So Deion obviously is a very controversial guy. He makes a lot of statements from his statements about his offensive line last year to his statements about the negative recruiting that he heard some other coaches were doing to Colorado and how he called them out. But now recently he's come out and, a little bit further back, he's talked about how Shedeur Sanders would be the 2nd best quarterback out of the class this year. But he's coming back because he wants to be number 1. Now, I don't know, I didn't really, when he had announced that he wasn't, that he was coming back to Colorado, I didn't really look too much into him. I, didn't really look at him as, what kind of prospect he's going to be for the next year for the NFL. I don't know that I would have had him at 2. I don't know that I would have had him at 3 or 4. I just don't know. But I think for him to come out and say he would have been the number 2, a little crazy. But now what he's doing is essentially he's saying that both of his sons, and Travis Henry included, or Travis Hunter, sorry, that they are going to essentially choose where they want to go to the NFL. Now, I know the most notable instance of this was Eli Manning, and I believe that he reached out to Eli Manning and talked to him, or at least called him out and said, we're going to do what Eli did. And I don't know that I necessarily hate this altogether. Excuse me. I think I like the idea of players kind of having a little bit more say with where they go. However, I'm also kind of that old school mentality where it's this is the draft. This is your opportunity to go play for a team, and you're already saying, well, we've got a list. We've got a list of teams that I'm going to play for. I think it's going to set up a very interesting scenario when you look at this 5-10 years later of how many players are going to do this. Is the NFL draft in your draft order essentially not going to matter anymore, because even if you get the first pick, you don't get the best player because the best player doesn't want to play for you. So it'll be very interesting. Now, one of the things that I read, not sure where, if I've got this here, but that one of the things that he is wanting and that he doesn't want his sons at least to play in a cold weather team. So he talked about how they've played in Texas, they've played in Colorado, and he said that Colorado doesn't get that cold during football season. But he doesn't want them playing in cold weather because they have always played in warm weather. I think that the interesting thing is they're getting really picky now. Now, if he's saying that he wants his sons to go to a team that has a good, a good playbook, or like they're going to, it's going to be a place where they're going to fit in, and it's going to be where their talents are going to be best utilized. I 100% get that, and I can kind of get behind that. But when you're choosing temperature and saying, you know what, Detroit, we don't want to come play for you. You know what, Minnesota, we're not going to play for you because you're too cold. I think that gets a little ridiculous. So I don't know. You can comment. You can tell me that I'm just being an old head here, and it's going to be good that players can kind of dictate where they go. I don't necessarily like it, but we'll see. We'll see what it means for their draft stock next year, and we'll see in the coming years, the next 5 to 10 years, how that's going to change how all players do it. We're already seeing some guys sit out. Caleb Williams sat out, didn't do his combine. Marvin Harrison didn't do a whole lot with his combine. I think for different reasons. He didn't really have much to prove. I don't think Caleb Williams really did either. I think he's still seen as the number one, prospect. That's not going to change. Same thing with Marvin Harrison. He's already proved it. But you're seeing a lot of slack given to those guys. And those guys are getting a lot of flack for not doing kind of the status quo, what everybody's done for years and years and years. Some people say it's really smart. They don't have anything else to prove. Why go in there? Marvin Harrison, for example, why go run a slower than everybody else 40 time when you've already proven that you're NFL ready? I can understand that. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Make sure you're commenting. Make sure you subscribe. We'll see you next time.